Hello and welcome to Rooted and Unwithered. I'm Cole Newton, and the following is a meditation on the New City Catechism. And this week we are in question 9, which asks, what does God require in the first, second, and third commandments? And the answer, first, that we know and trust God as the only true and living God. Second, that we avoid all idolatry and do not worship God improperly. Third, that we treat God's name with fear and reverence, honoring also His word and works. Having confessed the Ten Commandments as the summary of God's law in question 8, questions 9 through 12 now aim to give us a concise synopsis of each commandment. Here, the first 3 commandments are fittingly presented together, for these first commandments deal directly with how we are to worship and honor God as the only true and living God. The first commandment reads, "You shall have no other gods before me." While the wording of the command is negative, the Catechism summarizes it positively, saying that we know and trust God as the only true and living God. This is because each negative prohibition in the Ten Commandments also implies a positive exhortation. We are forbidden to have other gods before the Lord, before Yahweh, because in reality there is none like Him. Yahweh is the only true and living God, and He alone is worthy of being our God. And indeed, the very act of honoring something as divine is to recognize its greatness and to place one's trust in it. And our hearts are prone to know and trust many such gods. But there is only one true and living God, who is the creator of all things, and He alone is worthy to be known and trusted as such. The actual text of the second commandment is significantly longer than the first commandment. We see this in Exodus 20, verses 4 through 6. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. The Catechism explanation reads, that we avoid all idolatry and do not worship God improperly. Now, this rightly clarifies that the second commandment is not forbidding the making of art by way of paintings or sculptures, right? Rather, it is forbidding the making of idols, of crafting any image for the purpose of worshiping it. And yet, as the second part of the answer also notes, the second commandment also commands that we worship God properly, as He Himself is appointed. This implication is derived from the fact that images of God are also forbidden from being worshipped. This is because God cannot be imaged by anything other than humanity, imperfectly, and Jesus Christ, perfectly. To fashion an image of God and to worship it is essentially a denial of God's incomprehensible holiness. And indeed, the deaths of Nadab and Abihu are a warning that God deserves proper worship as well as exclusive worship. The third commandment reads, You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes His name in vain. And the Catechism notes that this commandment requires that we treat God's name with fear and reverence, honoring also His word and works. Now, treating God's name with fear and reverence means honoring it as holy, rather than as a vanity. And since a vanity is something that is frivolous and worthless, the use of God or Jesus Christ as simple exclamations is an all too common way of breaking this commandment. God's name is the reflection of His being and character, and to know God's name, therefore, is to know God Himself. His name is His honor, His reputation, and His character, and so to treat His name as vain, as common or ordinary, is therefore nothing less than a denial of God's holiness and of His divinity. And to see how God's name is always connected with His word and works, as the Catechism notes, meditating over Psalm 19 is a great place to begin. Now, with these commands set before us, it is worth reminding ourselves why God's demand for exclusive and proper worship is not megalomania. God is not narcissistic to command us to love Him because He is the supreme object worthy of love. His worship is also for our good because He is actually God. To worship anyone or anything else is a game of charades. It's calling a house of cards your home. After all, what husband or wife does not have the right to demand the faithful and exclusive love of his or her spouse? How much more, then, should the Creator expect the love of His creation? Brothers and sisters, do not love yourself, your spouse, your children, your job, your home, your hobby, your reputation, your money, your things, your time, or anything else with all your being. Love God. Love Him first and last and everywhere in between. Set north on the compass of your heart, soul, and might toward love for Him. Fan this love into a flame, fan it into a flame so bright that many waters cannot quench it. Indeed, it is the only fire that will burn for all eternity. Love Him so fully that every aspect of your life is fixed upon the goal of displaying the holiness and glory of His great name, whether in word or deed, whether in eating or in drinking. Thank you so much for listening. For more resources for knowing and loving God's Word, please visit bcnewton.co. And until next time, grace and peace.